everyone, and welcome to another episode of FortuneBuilders.tv. My name is JD Esajian, your host as always, and I'm excited about our topic today. One of the things that I personally get asked the most about is REO properties. So I wanted to spend some time today talking about what those are, what that means to you as an investor, a person in real estate, and how you can look at monetizing and making money in those type of deals. What REO stands for is real estate owned. And for those of you that don't know, real estate owned means that it's a bank owned property. When a property is foreclosed upon and the lender or the bank takes it back, it then becomes real estate owned. Now, what does that mean to us as an investor? Well, to us as an investor, it means a potential hardship for the seller. The bank has taken the property back. Okay, they don't want this asset. They're not in the business of owning real estate. They're in the business of making loans. Banks are. So when they take a property back, there's a distress there. They could potentially want to sell the property at a deep discount. And that for us as investors means an opportunity to pick up a property below market value. And when you pick up properties below market value, that's how you make money in real estate. Remember that you make your money when you buy the property, okay? You realize it when you sell it though. So the better you learn how to buy properties, the more money you'll make in this game of real estate. So let's talk for a little bit about some more specifics about real estate owned. I want to talk about what we call the big three. The big three numbers that you need to know on any deal, and certainly REOs are no different, okay? The number one number that you need to know as a real estate investor, and this is very important, is what's called the ARV. ARV stands for after repair value. That means what is that house, in this case, what is that REO property worth in its best condition, okay? When it's all fixed up and it's in the marketplace being sold as a retail property. And how you determine the ARV is through comparables, okay? You can use free sources online as a resource, but the best way for you to determine the ARV is by using MLS comparables, okay? An example of what I have right here, a map view of MLS comparables, okay? Then you've got detailed views of MLS comparables. So you want to pull comparables off of the MLS to determine your ARV. That's the number one number of the big three. The second number of the big three is the repair cost, okay? You need to know what it's going to cost to take that property that's in disrepair and put it in its best condition. And there are a lot of ways to determine repair costs. You have to walk through the house. You have to use forms like we have in our Rehabbers Reference Manual, which is a property repair estimate sheet. And you have to understand what are the repair costs. How much material and labor is it going to take to make that house sellable, so someone's going to want to buy it. Understand that we're in a buyer's market, so you have to do things so that a buyer will want the house. You have to know where and when to spend money, adding sizzle features, which are selling features. Okay, so that's number two of the big three. The third number then, you get that from your first two numbers, the ARV and the repair cost, is what we call your offer price. Now there's two components of the offer price. There's what you would actually offer for the property, and then what you'd be willing to pay for the property, the max you'd be willing to pay for the property. Now understand, and this is just good negotiations, you never want to offer the most you're willing to pay for the property. You always want to start below the max you're willing to pay, and then give yourself negotiating room to come up. And how do you determine how low you'd be willing to offer on the property? Well, that comes from extracting information from the sales side, talking to the listing agent and finding out how long has the property been listed, how motivated is the seller, or the bank in this case, and then that's going to help you formulate how low you offer, right? So that's important to understand, because you really make your money, and I'll say this again, when you buy the property and you realize it when you sell it. So the deeper discounts that you can buy on, the more money you'll make in this real estate game. So that's a quick overview of how to analyze REOs. And again, remember, REO stands for real estate owned. And the reason I like to talk about REOs is because there's a lot of opportunity for us as investors in the market. There's a million different ways you can market for properties. REOs is a way for you to look at deals that are available to us as investors and not really have to spend any money to find those deals, because a lot of them are on the MLS. In fact, most of them are on the MLS, which stands for the Multiple Listing Service, and that's free for us as investors or for agents that have their real estate license. So it's a great way to find deals in this marketplace right now. Because I get asked a lot of times, like, how do you find good deals? Where are you finding these properties at 50 cents on the dollar? You know, and that's a number one way that most investors across the country right now are finding good deals. Okay, so that's important to understand, and that's what I wanted to cover on the main topic for today's TV show. What I want to talk about next is, of course, our deal or no deal segment. Okay, every week, as you know, we go through a deal that either we're looking at or that a student or another investor is looking at, and we talk about Okay, what makes that a deal? What doesn't make that a deal? Now, certainly I just explained the big three numbers, and you need to know those to determine if it's a deal or not. But let's say, for example, on a property that we just analyzed last week, and this is what I'm looking at right here on this paperwork, a property in a section of our town called Point Loma. Okay, now that probably doesn't mean much to most of you watching this, but what it is a nice area of San Diego. Okay, on paper, after pulling MLS comparables, it looked like the ARV of this property was about $575,000. Now, right off the bat, that shouldn't mean anything to you because you don't know how much it needs in repairs, so we can't determine what we pay for the property. Well, after going through the property, determining repair costs, we realized that there's about $70,000 in repair costs. So initially looking at the property on a $575,000 ARV with about $75,000 in repairs, we were willing to offer in the mid threes for this property, about $350,000, which if you run the numbers on holding costs and the timeline of this project would have been about an $80,000 profit. Now that's a good payday on a property for us here in San Diego. In your market, the numbers may be a little bit lower and the spreads may be a little bit smaller, but the process that you look at when you're looking at the deal is the same. Now what's interesting about this particular property is that initially on paper the numbers looked like that the ARV was going to be $575,000. So initially, deal or no deal, looked like a deal, but it turns out that it's actually not a deal, and I'll explain why. There's a lot more that goes into analyzing a property than truthfully just the numbers. That's where you have to start and understand how to do that. But the next phase of analyzing a deal, and truly what separates investors, good investors from great investors, is the ability to determine the sellability of the property. And that comes from more than just numbers. So let me walk you through what I did at this property and what you should do at your properties when you go through. You've got your numbers, you've got your comps, you've looked at all that, fantastic. But when you walk through a property, you want to wear what I call two hats. Okay, you have an investor hat, and that's just crunching numbers. And then you have your buyer's hat. Okay, that hat may have a few more flowers on it, maybe a straw hat, maybe a cowboy hat, depending on what you're into. But it's a buyer's hat. It means that you're going to walk through and you're going to approach the property like a buyer would when the house is finished. Now, what does that mean? Well, you're going to get a feel for the house, meaning how does the space feel when you pull up to the house, when you walk into the house? What does it feel like when you go through the property? Does it have a warmth to it? Does it invite you in? Can you see your family living in the property? What does that feel like? And on this particular property, when you pulled up to the home, well, first and foremost, it was on a busy street, okay, which is a definite no-no when you're looking at properties in this market because it's a buyer's market. There's a lot to choose from. They'll go around the corner and they'll pick another house that's on a quiet street. So you came up to the house on a busier street, which, there is a price that we'd be willing to buy that house for. So that's not the main reason. That's not the only reason we didn't buy it. But the driveway was really small and the house sat really close to the front of the street. So you go to the house, you pull up, and it's really tight. It doesn't feel inviting. I couldn't see my kids or someone's kids running out of the car into the house when they got home from school. Okay, that just wasn't able to be done there because of the way the house sat on the street. And that's the same thing that your buyers are going to look at when they come to look at the house. The other thing that was really unfortunate about where this house was is that the way the street was, it was busy and it was also sort of on a downhill portion of the street. So you literally had to wait in the driveway. We had to wait in the driveway for over 5 minutes just to be able to back out of the driveway. Now, think about that. And this was like middle of the day, no specific high traffic time. Someone comes to look at your house, you're done with the rehab, and they're trying to get out of the property after the showing, and it takes them 5, 6, 7 minutes to back out of the driveway. You think you're ever going to call from them again? You're not, okay? Because they're going to have a negative experience leaving that property. So in this particular case, the numbers were good. Deal or no deal? No deal for those reasons. Okay, that was before I even got into the house. Once I went into the house, the layout wasn't bad, and we can make the changes inside the house that'll make it feel a little bit better and feel more warm. The other problem with this property, and this applies to any deal you're looking at, is there wasn't a lot of outdoor space, a lot of backyard space. So there was little frontage, little yard in front, nothing that you could use, and there was a little yard in back. And that's not going to sell houses, okay? So in this particular case, deal or no deal? No deal. And it's important that you understand that you need to look at the property certainly before you write an offer, and understand that there's more that goes into the property than just numbers. So in this particular case, our initial ARV of 575 was off. We have to subtract and deduct for the location of the property. And in this particular case, that's about a $25,000 to $30,000 deduction on what we'd be comfortable selling that property for. So if you work backwards, that just means that we have to offer less. Now, we offered on this property, but it wasn't a deal at the initial numbers we were looking at on paper. And it's important that you go through that thought process when you're looking at your own properties.